Alright, I've been asked to talk a little bit about how I transfer my designs for 2-needle beadwork, and so this is a little bit on applique. The method I'm about to show you is something I've adapted from other methods that are used in quilting. I've seen them here in the States, I've seen them overseas. I think people like the tent makers over in Cairo use this method. There's just a lot of history to it. It's really simple, which I think is why it's so common. But it's not the only way to skin this cat. There's going to be people that are saying, well, I've seen something different. Traditional way is different. I've been taught a lot of different ways to do this, and this is just what I have found works best for me, and what I find is the fastest and easiest way to do this. So this is just how that works for me. Having said that, some things that you're going to need in order to get this done, you're going to need obviously what you're going to bead on. So in this case, I've got my wool set up here. I've got some brown packing paper, whether you take it from a grocery sack or whether it's off the roll, whatever it is. You just want something that's going to be heavy and durable. In addition, I have a pencil to make my marks. I also have on the back of that pencil, I've attached a little needle here to help me with the next stage after I draw everything. I've got a marker that works on the fabric. You want to test it on the fabric before you use it to make sure it's going to be permanent, and at the same time it's going to show up and it's not going to wear off when you're doing your beadwork. You don't want it sticky. You don't want it to make a mess. You don't want it to stick it to the side of your hand and then track all over the stuff. So be really particular about what kind of marker you use for this. I would think like maybe a good gel pen or something like that would work well. I imagine there's any number of things, but the main thing is you want something that is going to actually give you a permanent line at the end of things when you get it all done. As for the temporary part of that, I also use chalk. And so this is some pantyhose with some line chalk poured into there. I like using the lightweight line chalk because I don't want something that is hard to take out of the fabric in case I make a mistake. So having said that, let's talk about designs real quick. There's a lot of different types of beadwork in the world. There's a lot of different people that do this. There's a lot of different communities that have these designs and elements. So in the communities that I work in and work for, so to speak, a lot of those people have specific thoughts there. And I'm going to say about this much on that. Just be mindful of what you're doing. You don't want to just go copy a piece and oh, that looks really cool, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to oh, if I change a color or do something it's completely different. It's not. People will recognize that stuff. People tend to see ownership in that. Those beadwork designs mean things, so it could be like where you're from or what family you're in or what clan you're part of. That goes down to color combinations. It goes down to the elements. The elements themselves may mean things. You just have to be mindful of that. So if you're going to take the time to do this kind of beadwork, take the time to go to those people and learn from them and ask those questions and find out what you can about those things. Because it's one thing to have, oh, this looks really cool. It's another thing to be walking around with something you know nothing about. Especially, it could turn out to be something that's religious. It could be something that turned out to be, important in a family thing. You just don't cross those lines. Just do yourself a favor and go ask those questions. Bring some gifts and go learn. So that's not something I'm going to go into here. It's not something that I think you can really learn over YouTube. You can only really go figure that out by going in person and asking the right people those questions. So just be respectful of that. Sometimes a design is just a design. Sometimes it's not. If you don't know the difference, that's where you have a problem. So just keep that in mind. Now, having said that, this design is something I just laid out. It's a simple little semi-fleur-de-lis, and it's something I just kind of think looks like a vase. There's no magic significance here that I'm aware of. It's just something I drew for the example. So that's where this comes from. So let's talk about the process real quick. The paper itself is folded up into quarters at this point. You can fold it into more. As you start to see this, you'll understand why that's important. But for what I want just a 4-element, nice and even design. So in order to do that, I've got 4 quadrants built. I folded it in half, then folded it in half again. When I measured the paper originally, I went down and I tried to figure, well, this is how wide the selvage is. I want my design to start a little bit past the selvage, so that's where I got this measurement from. So as far as that goes, this is, of course, how wide is my paper, how wide is my fabric. Once all that's laid out, I folded it in quarters, and here's the folded edge and here's a folded edge. You take your pencil, you draw whatever you're going to draw, make your corrections, make it look nice and however you want it. But once you get this laid out, the next step is to take your needle and punch holes through the entire bundle of paper. So I'm just going to follow that entire line and perforate it as best I can. If I do it too much, then it's going to just fall right out. I don't want it to fall out. I just want the holes following the lines. If I don't do it, tight enough, then I'm going to have a bigger problem, because then I can't really follow the lines very well. So having said all of that, just make sure that you're really mindful about getting a good following on your lines with the holes. So here's what happens. When I open it up, I have a reflection now, so my symmetry is nice and even. I don't have to draw the whole element, I just have to draw half the element. And furthermore, when I open it up again, I now have the full design all set out. Nice and even for me. It's really easy, and that is going to help make it look a lot nicer than if I'm trying to hand sketch everything else. Now, other people have different methods. I was taught one of the first ways was to cut, get everything laid out and just cut out one of my templates, and then lay it on the fabric however I want it and trace it each time I'm gonna use it. That's fine. You can do that. Old people used to use like a flour mixture with some water, and then they would trace some of this stuff. There's a lot of different ways to do this, so I'm not just saying this is the right way to do it, but again, this is a really fast way, and for me it gets really nice clean results. So here's the other aspect. It gives me a center line, and in this particular piece I've marked the center of my cloth here, and I've marked the center of my cloth here. So all I have to do is line up that center line along with those 2 points. And furthermore, because I've measured from this edge of my wool, all I have to do is make sure that my paper is down against that edge nice and clean. And so now the selvage is compensated for, and here's the beginning of my design, and everything's laid out nice and pretty there. So again, everything is ready to go. I'm going to take my chalk ball and I'm just going to rub the paper, and I'm going to make sure that that chalk ball goes over every one of these little holes, because that's what's transferring my design through onto the fabric. You have to be careful, because you want to hold it nice and still, which is what makes it a two-handed job. It's hard to do with the camera in your hand. So as I'm going, I want to make sure that this paper is not sliding around. I want to make sure that everything is nice and nice and level. It's not going to bounce around on me, and I don't have to put a lot of pressure. I just have to dab it along. It's no big deal. When I'm finished, I can just lift this up, and what's left behind is my design. So in this particular case, and looking at it, this side here, if you look, maybe, I don't know if you'll be able to see it very well, but there's little points now where all that chalk has come through those holes. That shows me my line. If I look back and I'm saying, oh well, it's not right, maybe for some reason this whole thing is angled a way that I don't like, I can just rub it off at this point and start again and do it again. If I don't like the design, I can just rub it off and start again. There's really nothing lost at this stage, as long as I use chalk that's not going to be permanent. Now, if I like what I've done, everything looks right, everything's ready to go, then I take my marker and I go and just follow the chalk lines. It's really simple. So I've already done that here. At this point now, all that chalk, doesn't matter if it's worn off or not. This marker is going to stay there for me to do my white line to put the borders down on it. It's really easy to do at that point. Again, with the marker, you just want something that's not going to be messy and sticky and weird. You don't want something that's going to track around all over this. You want something that's going to be permanent enough that when you're doing and actually handling it and doing the beadwork, it's not going to just rub off. I think that's one of the things that most people that do two needle complain about is, how do I keep my lines so that they stay there? I don't have to keep, redrawing my lines. Well, with the marker, a good one, you just have to draw it once. You're done. If you have, this one, it'll wear down a little while, but I can do all these lines before they're gone, and I'm not going to lose anything. I don't have to redraw everything. If it's a really complicated pattern, like an apron or something like that, I may have to reapply one or two elements. But all things considered, you just want it so that it's going to be easy on you, and you're not going to lose things and have to lay everything back out. So in a nutshell, that's what I'm doing. That's how I go about approaching this particular issue. Like I said before, there's other ways to do it. Maybe if you've got a better idea or other ways to do it, by all means make comments, ask questions. I'll do my best to try to keep up with those things and answer questions if I can. Either way, I appreciate you spending the time and tuning in. Hope everybody's doing well, and have a good day.